in our case, as in PR Works, just to share, the reason I with Tina since 2012, 2013, it's also like part of our advocacy because we see like tech, it's to a degree um, evening the playing field, right? So it can economically improve the lives of people. So even if it was hard from the start and also up to now, we're still here supporting this event with that vision that somehow eventually we'll be able to have like an impact
Yeah.
as we envision it. In PR Works, like since 2012, like we've been having winners, no, from different startup weekends. But like after a while, when we track them, like how are they?
Yeah.
So
They fizzle out.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So now we want to have like stories of startups because we don't see stories about startups. It's always like the big ones, but we don't have stories about those starting and how they pivot, what are their challenges. So it's good that we're coordinating now because we want those stories.
Actually, if I could chime in, since I do a lot of community work in Davao City, I'm seeing a lot of the younger generations, even those who are still in their first year of college, they are taking really the lead towards making their own startups. One fun fact about here right now in Go Up, one of the volunteers also came from Davao City. She is first year. She started her own effort to make her own startup, doing these different like programs when she was still senior high school.
Wow.
And right now she has like a full-time job while being a full-time student and attending all of our different tech events. And right now she's even here as a volunteer to Go Out. The younger generation right now is really hungry.
So maybe when I go to Davao like this weekend, so we can sit down and maybe come up with a list like those that we can write about. So we want that sustained.
Yeah.
There's this old adage and quote about 9 out of 10 startups fail. But this is like going around for the last, since Y Combinator started 25 years ago, this was kind of the trend. Today, the complications around starting up have amplified to a point where 99 out of 100 fail. And the biggest challenge that I see is that failed startups don't share their learnings with other startups. This is one of the areas where we have a format in our monthly meetup where we encourage people to share what failed.
Yeah.
Because this is like mitigating the risk for the next generation of founders, and that's pretty much what when Bayanihan is trying to work with any set of founders, we're trying to inverse this to 9 out of 10 should succeed, simply because they should just follow a simple checkbook and a playbook, which is, we have a completely inclusive environment where you can access any of the playbooks for free. You don't have to pay anything, you don't have to subscribe to anything. And this is probably the most critical mass decision that any startup ecosystem enabler can make today, which is empower people with the knowledge first.
Yeah, that's even that one is also like a good story, diba? For startups where they can access that one for lessons and sharing notes.
That's true.
So we'll be sharing the link today in our talk to the access to our online portal with all our knowledge banks and resources. Until now, it was just a Davao and Mindanao oriented discussion and framework, but we've just decided that it's time to open it up to the Philippines and just say anyone in the Philippines should have access to this. And we don't necessarily want to take the lead, but we feel like we want other entrepreneurs to join and be part of, and which is why it's a circle. Founderscircle.ph is a product born out of Bayanihan Ventures, but it's the grassroots part of Bayanihan Ventures, which is, we don't take credit for it, we don't own it, we want all the founders to own it. And that's the key difference to how future generations of founders can find success if they work with the environment which is led by founders, for founders, of founders.
Yeah. In fact, just very recently, we invited people from Manila, Simon Baumgarten. He was the most recent, one of the recent speakers last week or 2 weeks ago at Founder Circle. We will be inviting more people like Jay Fajardo. They have committed, as well as some of the investors. You know, they want to come down and check Davao and help these probinsya-based
Yeah. The mga
founders,
probinsyanos
aspiring
and provincianos.
entrepreneurs. Because I also want to add this because I was asked earlier today what makes a venture studio. So practically, we're a venture studio. Different from a venture capital firm. So basically, a venture capital firm, they're also good for the startup ecosystem because they deploy capital, right? They provide funding for usually the mid-stage, showing traction, showing growth startups. Because their whole goal is they are picking bets, so basically picking winners. But for venture studios, we want to make winners. Right? Ideally, we want to make everyone win, but that's not really possible. So that's mainly the difference. Venture capital, picking winners, but venture studios are making winners out of everyone.
Great, great.
Great.
Thinking forward, how do you see yourselves 5 years from now? What's the ultimate goal?
When I first met Nikhil, he was actually very upbeat and want to start immediately. And if I'm not mistaken, he wants to build 100 startups per year.
Okay.
But seeing the realities on the ground, obviously there are challenges, right? We too are a startup venture studio, right? So I think we want to scale it down to probably 3 startups per year or
More
something like that.
realistic goal.
Until we are also figuring out things along the way, right? Until we can scale up to 5 per quarter, 10 per quarter, or something like that. At least we want to.
Yeah, I think because in Bismin, each island or province has a different landscape. So it cannot be like a template approach. So it has to be can be very live.
Yeah. My addition to that is in 5 years, I see us holding the fort with Founders Circle and being able to expand and support and nurture it and invite as many participants as we can. This year we played quite a pivotal role in the shaping of, in Davao we now have a Davao Angel Investor Network, which all of the Philippines does not know about. but we got some local press coverage around it, and John and I were the instrumental pioneering members of, and we have only 9 members in this, unlike in Manila where there's over 100 members. But I think it's an important start.
Even more advanced, Cebu doesn't have a group like that.
Right. But what I meant is, in 5 years, I feel like the ecosystem, nurturing the ecosystem and getting to a point where we have a mature landscape is what I'd like to see, because then everything else gets easier. The entire challenge with deal flow, which is what everyone looks at. Okay, $1 billion of deal flow took place last year, the year before last, as well as this year we crossed $1 billion. But the most challenging fact is, at the other end of the prism is talent flow. Supporting talent and to make sure that they get through that, that point, that inflection point where they can have a successful startup, forget about a successful exit, just a successful growth projector. That is probably the biggest challenge in the Philippines today in the startup ecosystem. So I think 5 years from now, I would like to see a hell of a lot more Zebra companies attending Geeks on a Beach, being part of this. See, Geeks on a Beach having to have split itself up twice a year, because it's not going to be just an annual event. It might
Quarterly.
we'll see this,
And maybe doing a packet go-ups in different parts of
Yeah,
at least in the
it's quite
Philippines.
different
So it's more
regions.
accessible to more startups and investors.
we've been invited by this Tagum City to just share our playbooks and replicate the Bayanihan Ventures Founders Circle model in each of the cities in Mindanao. So now we said, okay, but we don't want to do it just shoot from the hip and do it. So we said, okay, let's draft out a clear agenda, a clear, a mandate, so that everyone knows who's going to take accountability for it and execute on it. Because we want to make sure that it's the same level of quality, same level of commitment, and more important than quality and commitment is consistency.
Yeah,
This
agree.
is probably the biggest rude awakening for me in the Philippines, moving here, is to see that there's annual events, there are great celebrations of certificates for every small event, but you don't see the momentum building. And at Bayanihan Ventures, that's the key KPI that we're after. We're trying to understand, okay, how can we improve on last month? So internally as a team, as well as for all the founders, we have something called the plus minus next. We say every month, do what went well this month, what didn't go well,
needs to be.
and what are you looking forward to next month? Because this is what's going to leverage, and be a track. So anyone that is a startup in our pipeline, they have to on their Facebook page build in public. They have to share their stats, they have to share their failures, they have to share what they're about. Because unless you're doing this is your engagement, your visibility point. You're not going to have the early traction, early adoption, feedback. And you have to be in this startup ecosystem. You have to stay vulnerable. You can't just show your wins. You have to show how you struggle, because it can't just be like, oh, I got this award, I got the certificate.
There has to be more stories on that,
right.
rather than just all the funding and stories.
Showing
no?
all the scars
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sharing battle stories.
Agree.
So 5 years, that's my vision for 5 years, a very mature startup ecosystem in which a humble organization, Bayanihan Ventures, as a studio can fit in and support as many founders in education, agriculture, and healthcare.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a really very engaging.
By the way, I love the
show.
hats.
Oh,
Matching hats.
Thank you, thank you.
It's an invitation to be
That's
a
a
Bayani.
Photo